How we doing? This is Fox back again. Back into the old routine. Today we're going to be doing some requests. This one was by Ali. I'm not even going to try and pronounce his surname. Yeah, it was for this track. It's French Plates 2016, must be the mix. It was by somebody called Mateba, Syncope. It's a liquid drum and bass track, but it's French. He wanted me to make a couple of the bass sounds. What I ended up doing was pretty much recreating the whole heart of the track, and it sounds like this. There you go. I'm going to show you how to make all three of the sounds that I decided to make from this. There's this plucky sort of bass. There's this sort of whip or push sound that I like to call them. It's quite a dull down with a lot of reverb on it. And then there's this pad, continuous pad. It's a 2-note chord. Nice and straightforward. Yeah, it might be a bit long this because I'm going to show you how to make all three of these sounds. These sounds are free to download. There's a link in the description. There's a link in the description to this track if you want to listen to it and compare them. I will also put timestamps in the description if you want to skip one of these sounds and then move to the next. So this is the first one, the pluck. This is the second one, the push, I'll call it. This was the pad. So in the description, pluck, push or pad if you want to learn how to make one or either or all three. So yeah, let's get started. Might as well start at the top and go for this pluck sound. Talk about processing we've got on the channel later. We'll turn it off for now. So yeah, there's not honestly not that much to this one. It's real straightforward. We're going to initialize it. So it's two saw waves. The first one is 2 octaves down. The notes I've got in this MIDI clip, if you're wondering, are D2. So if you want to make this, it wants to be around about the D2 area. So pull it down 2 octaves. Got quite a bit of D-tune on this, which is strange for a bassy pluck, but it must have needed it. I believe I've got this controlled with an envelope later on. So we'll give it 8 voices unison, pull the D-tune down. Don't do anything else with it. Oscillator B is also a saw wave. This one is only 1 octave down. No unison on this, and we're going to push the level up to full on the first oscillator. Just a real gritty saw wave at the minute. Change amp envelope, give it a little bit of a plucky feel. About 60 seconds of release. Decay of 8, 5, 6. Nothing, just a tiny bit of a decrease in volume over time. Envelope 2 is the one that's going to do all the work. This controls the volume of the sub-oscillator, filter cutoff, and also the D-tune for oscillator A. Yeah, it's just the MG Low 12, the standard filter that it comes on. The starting point I had 19 Hertz. This is what gives it that real low, bassy sort of plucky feel. Because the envelope's going to flick the filter open to let the highs through, and it's going to come back to this real low point of 20 Hertz, right deep in sub territory. So, bit of drive, bit of fatness, resonance, pan, keep it where it is. We're going to send oscillator A and B through to this. The sub-oscillator is going to be going direct out, or doesn't necessarily need to be direct out, it just doesn't want to be routed to the filter. So, say envelope 2 is the one doing all the work, we're going to drop it on. It's a real plucky pluck. So, you want 1/4 of a second. 293, 274 milliseconds. Sustain on 0. This gives us the pluck shape. We're just going to make the curve even steeper just by dragging this little node down. And the destination amount is around about 56. So we'll play with this till it sounds as dull or as bright as we want it. So that sounds quite dull at the minute. I did use the note modulation to help us flick this around a little bit more. When that higher note comes in, you can see in the MIDI clip, it goes from D to F2, so 3 semitones up from the original. When that note comes in, I wanted the filter to open up more, so I dragged it, dropped it on, only a fraction, just to give us a little bit more brightness, and then keep it running until you can see this green knob, this little green thing. You want it right at the bottom like that, and then you want it to flick up to almost top when that F comes in. Bit more. Yeah, if you were playing this in another key, you'd probably have to fine tune that to make sure that it did open up when it came to that high note, but it's a real easy trick that I often do to let a little bit more brightness in the higher the notes come up. It's just standard key tracking. They just call it note tracking rather than key tracking. You can engage it there, but it's easier to do it more manually like this. You have real control over where it's going to bounce and how far the filter is going to open. Something I do quite a lot. Sound is almost done now. The sub oscillator was a sine wave, 1 octave down, volume all the way down, and as I said earlier, we're going to use envelope 2 to flick this round full, so just drag it, drop it on it. We're also going to use this to bring the unison detune in around about 60. So what effects did I have? Nothing. So that is it, nice and straightforward. I've done the processing externally on this sound rather than using the effects inside Serum. I've got a bit of compression. Saturator, it's pretty much standard what I do on any bass nowadays. I'll always have a saturator set to soft sine. Aim it where you want it to give you the most damage, if you like. I've got it 577 Hz, so it's pretty much bass, low mid territory. Dry wet 81%. Sidechain compression, because these notes are actually bang on where the kick is. Apart from this one, every time a kick comes in, the note was being played. You could hear that. You could definitely hear that in the sound. The kick was quite a dull kick in regards to it didn't have much high content to it or anything apart from like a real subby sort of punch in the track. That's what made me decide that they was playing the actual bass notes over the kick. So I've got some sidechain compression just to move it out of the way of the click of the kick. Some EQ just to bring out some parts that I wanted to come out. Yeah, there you have it. That one is easy peasy, lemon squeezy. So now we're going to be covering this push sound, or the whip, whatever you want to call it. This one is nice and easy too. There's honestly these. When I was having a conversation with a chap after I made these sounds, I said the producer that made this originally probably has an analog synth. They sounded very analogy to me, and it was only basic waveforms that I used in recreating these sounds. So it's very likely he was using a hardware synth. If not, why would you not want to use analog waveforms? They're the purest and easiest to work with. So he may well have used Serum. Yeah. So this is it. Let's solo it. Again, not much to it. Just a little bit of filter modulation, opening it up. Some reverb and some EQ to bring out the frequencies that we wanted to accentuate. So we're going to initialize it. Oscillator 1 is a saw wave, 1 octave down. Oscillator B, set to basic shapes, is a square wave. You could definitely tell there was a square wave in it just from listening to it, from my personal experience. Yeah, 8 voices unison. It was a quite wide sound that was mixing with the detune. A quite wide sound that was mixing with the reverb, help it giving it that sort of wide smear as the reverb pushes out. 5 detune on the square wave. Didn't do nothing else really. Kept the volumes on the same. I did use a sawtooth on the sub oscillator. Just kept it where it were to bring in some brighter harmonics. I did control this with an envelope as well in a bit. Envelope 1 is nothing. That's what it sounds like at the minute, just a detuned bog standard sound. So we're going to introduce the filter. It was the MG Low 12 again. Some drive, some fatness, A, B and the sub all going into the filter. Start off point I had 129 Hz, so outside of sub territory. to give us some brighter harmonics to start, and then we're going to use a filter to open it up over time. Use an envelope to open it up over time. That is envelope 2. If I am rushing here, it's because I didn't want it to be too long, so hopefully you're understanding what I'm saying. So they are quite basic patches. I had this pushed around to 18, 19, so it's going to open the filter up from there to 400 hertz. The way you control the speed is have the sustain on full, and then you control it with the attack time. We wanted about half a second, 500 milliseconds. Push the little node up a bit so it's more of a linear curve. Decay didn't really come into play. I mean, you can control this however you want. If you just want it to be brighter, just push the destination amount round. The further you go, obviously the brighter the sound's going to get. Because I was trying to mimic the one in the sound exactly, it was quite dull. It was really the reverb that brought everything together. Envelope 2 on the level for the volume for the sub oscillator. Not really going to hear that because it's an octave up than the other 2 oscillators, but it does add something. I think that's it. There weren't really much to this one at all. It was just then the effects. So I used the reverb. I kept it on Hall. I cranked the size up. The decay, low cut. Obviously, I didn't want to be reverbing any of the lows because it would really start muddying your mix up. Spin depth, and mix about 45%. And then the EQ, I'll just give us a bell curve. Introduced 7, 8, 9 dBs of gain, and then just found a spot where it was accentuating. .600 hertz, something like that. It was just boosting that frequency to help bring out the reverb. I could have that before, it wouldn't really make much difference. If you boost the signal going in with an EQ, the reverb's going to affect that, or if you boost the signal going out, it's going to boost the reverb and still accentuate them sounds. So in this instance, it doesn't really matter which order they go in. I did have reverb before EQ. Let's look for the patch again, see how close we got. So that's the one we've recreated. DnB, LE, push. Pretty much identical. Obviously, it's quite quiet. I've got no external processing on this apart from some EQing, some extra EQing, just bringing out the sounds that I wanted. I probably would or should have cut out some more of the lows. The drums, if you're wondering, I programmed them all myself in my typical drum group that I've got. They're all Leviathan sounds. Kick, clap, layered with a snare. Closed hats with a bit of delay. Shaker. Everything panned a bit to give us a bit of space. And then on the bus, I've just got some glue compression. Some transient master, just making it a little bit more punchy. That's it for that sound. The last sound we're going to be going over is this pad. This one is really basic. It shouldn't take too long at all. Just going to increase the gain so you can hear it. Tremolo-y, constant sort of drone. These sort of pads are very common in liquid drum and bass because they can just flow through the whole track. Sounds can be pushed in and out of them. They're not taking up too much of the spectrum. I mean, this is just a saw wave detuned. I mean, if we put an EQ on it, it's literally just the 2 harmonics. It's just 2 main harmonics punching through. So it's taking up. It can fill up a lot of the track if you add a lot of extra reverb, which I've got on Ascend, to give it more space. But in regards for it fitting in a mix, it's very, very easily because it's only really taking up between 400 and 500 hertz there. Yeah, easy peasy. So I'm not even going to bother. Well, I will. We'll initialize it. I'll show you how I made it. So I went analog, basic shape. So I could tell it was a sine wave. It was very fluty, pure sounding. I gave it 8 voices of unison. Pulled the detune back slightly. That was virtually the sound. I could tell there was some tremolo sort of sound effect going on. So I set an LFO to 1/8, left it on BP and anchored. Drag this, drop it on the fine. And if we go into the matrix section, it was going both ways, so it's swinging off axis around about 39. That's giving it that real subtle sort of tremolo. If we crank this right up, more crazy sort of effect. You can have as little or as much as this you want. The only thing I did then was introduce a low pass filter. Again, the MG Low 12, I use it all the time. It's mainly because it's the default one and I forget to pick the other slopes, but it really works well on sounds like this. So pulled it down to 150 Hertz, used this same LFO to flick it open. This is going to give us another shimmery sort of sound. Again, and if we, in the matrix section, set the mod wheel to filter cutoff, you can then control how bright you want this sound to be just by modulating the mod wheel. If we give it some destination, obviously. That wants to be positive. Why has that gone so quiet? It's because that's set both ways. So yeah, that was it. What did I have in the effects? I had a bit of chorus just to smear everything together, only using the one delay line, feedback depth, everything. Just pulled the mix down. I then sent it to a delay again just to smudge it all together. I didn't do anything with that, just turned it on. The reverb after the delay, so it's reverbing the delayed signal as well. Size, decay, low cut, high cut, spin. Again, just introduced a bit more wet. That's it. Sidechain compression. Yeah, that's it. I really enjoyed doing this. It didn't obviously take me that long because they're all quite basic sounds. Took me an hour probably to mackle all this together, probably 15 minutes to do the drums. I'll just quickly show you what effect this glue compressor and the transient master has on the drums. So glue compressor. Catching the peaks, toning it in all a little bit. The transient master has a big effect. It's by far one of the best plugins I've got to use on drums. I use it all the time on my drum bus. It's just so simple. It's like a reverse compressor. The more attack you have, yeah, the faster, the greater you turn the attack knob round, the faster the attack increases on your sound. A compressor works the other way. If you ever turn the attack knob further to the right, it has a longer attack. It lets the transients come through rather than. It's hard to explain. It's sort of the same as a compressor. It is a compressor, but they've just simplified it just with these two knobs. So if you want more attack, just turn the attack knob round. If you want less sustain, pull it down. So if you increase the attack, pull the sustain, it's just making everything punchier. I'll show you. You can really transform the sound. But yeah, that's it. That was, what was the name of it again? Oh, it's gone now. Anyhow, those were the 3 sounds from that French drum and bass liquid track. Yeah, hope to enjoy it. Please stay tuned for more of these. I've got a load more requests to work on this week. Yeah, thanks for watching.